This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again, time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 195. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Kodra.
Hi.
Tam.
Hi.
And Thalen.
Hey there.
So, so a little background, I'm hoping you listened to last week, because we were talking about the Nintendo Rundown, and one of the titles that was shown only on the Japanese Nintendo Direct was a version of Phantasy Star Online 2 that runs off the cloud, kind of like I think the mobile version does. And I mentioned that I really wish this meant that, it was coming to the United States or in an English language version. And I've known there was an English patch for a while, but I thought it involved a significant amount of nonsense to get it working. And then Thalen turned around and mentioned the amount of nonsense that I went through to play Monster Hunter Online, which was a horrible experience. And
I accept no responsibility for your choices.
It involved me faking a Chinese regional ID to get into Monster Hunter Online. Sunday morning, I decided, I finished editing the podcast. Let's see how hard this is. And for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. The hardest part is getting a Sega ID. And a Sega ID requires you to fill out a CAPTCHA. The CAPTCHA is in hiragana. So,
if you are familiar at all with hiragana, this CAPTCHA is fairly easy, actually.
Yeah.
It was not easy for me.
But if you are not familiar with hiragana, it's a bunch of little squiggly figures that all look the same.
Right. Well, and it's handwritten hiragana, not like it was. If it was computer generated, that would be easy because I'm matching like objects and like objects.
I mean, it is computer generated. It's just in a handwriting like font.
Yeah.
But I had to.
It sucks.
I had to.
The font can make a big difference.
It took me roughly 15 tries to get a pair that matched, because there are too many symbols that are slightly similar, and I wasn't exactly sure which version of it was the one that was actually correct. But once that was accomplished and I had a Sega ID, it was downloading the game, and that in itself is its own feat, given that the game once installed is 53 gig.
Wow. I think it's the second largest MMO on my computer right now.
Yeah, there's 5 years worth of content. And it's not an insignificant amount of content, apparently. Also, there is a patcher that you download, and thankfully, folks have made that pretty straightforward. And if there's new translations, they'll pop up and say, you've got new translations to download, and it'll deal with the patching it in. But, it's perfectly playable. And if you ever played Phantasy Star Online, the original, it's going to be a completely recognizable game. I started a cast ranger, which is their robots, and rangers being a gun class. And it played just like, well, not just like, but close enough that it felt like I was playing the old Dreamcast version, just greatly improved. You now have 3 weapons to choose from instead of just the one weapon that your class specializes in. So I had a gun blade type attack that would knock enemies up in the air and then shoot them while they're in the air.
I think the gunblade is weird because the hunter also has that.
Oh, you also get the gunblade? Cool.
Yes.
It's fun.
I suspect it was added in an update or something.
Maybe. They have a weird summoner class where you summon a beast and then direct its moves with a conductor's wand. Bouncer seems to be a dual-wield blade knife thing fighter. For the most part, it's the same little closed courses that the original game had. They're just prettier. There's some kind of a harvesting system that I haven't quite figured out, but you have a arcade style limited number of resources to harvest with that regenerate over time. I'm not entirely certain what you can do with the things. Some of them seem to be like buff food, and other things go into like a crafting tab that I'm not really sure what to do with yet. The only problem with the English translation is they've basically translated the Golden Path. And there's lots of stuff you'll encounter that isn't necessarily translated, and then all of a sudden, when it becomes important again, it will be translated again. So it's weird. It's a little jarring to start a quest, and it's all in Japanese, and then like when it actually starts, it immediately shifts to English. But I guess people decided, the few sentences that were said before the start weren't really important enough to translate. The other thing that I'll say is this game is some Persona-style nonsense in some of the story elements, because like there's a whole Sword Art Online kind of subplot going on where you're straight up breaking the fourth wall constantly. And it becomes like you're following the life of this Japanese schoolgirl that is like a PSO2 guide in her free time. So yeah, no, it gets really weird. I guess they made significant changes between season 4 and 5, and when you launch the game, you get to choose which one you're going to play, if you're going to play 1 through 3 or 4 and 5. And by default, it defaulted me to season 4, so I have no idea how we got to where we're at. But apparently, like, I can run missions in Tokyo.
Huh.
So I've started back, and I'm playing through 1 to see if, like, any of this is going to make any sense at any point. For the most part, it seems to pick up where the original game left off. Some time has passed, and, the ships have woken back up, and people have started getting pulled back out of cryo-freeze or whatever their version of cryo-freeze is, and you're essentially a person from before, which is cool other than the fact that it's probably a little jarring when you play one of the classes that didn't exist from before. Kind of the cool thing about it is like this time your robots can be more human-y. So like my cast has a full robot body, but it has like a human head. So kind of like Rin in Phantasy Star 3 was like a robot. Like they had several characters. Rin was one I can remember off the top of my head that were like robots, but with like human heads.
Like hopefully that's not as creepy as it sounds, because it sounds super creepy.
It looks like you're just in power armor.
Okay.
Or at least the set of armor the body I'm using looks like I'm in power armor. There are ones that are like these super thin twig-like limbs. No, that doesn't look right at all. It looks like you have a robot skeleton and a head crudely grafted onto it.
There are a lot of robot options.
Yes, there's a lot of options, period. The only thing that I would prepare anyone playing this game is this was one of the first MMOs with like a gratuitous boob slider, and a lot of the NPCs have taken full advantage of it. So yeah, it's one of those games. But I think I've made it up to almost 20 at this point. So like the levels go really quick. It's the same Diablo-ish grind that the original one was, where you run some stuff, get weapon drops, feed the weapon drops that you don't need to your mag to grow it so it does interesting things. I mean, it's kind of not as cool because like I don't have the weird little video screen memory card that shows me my mag. So I can't have my Tamagotchi mag.
The PSP game did not have mag that's quite as involved, so this part's new to me.
Yeah, you could absolutely take the memory card out and play with your mag while you weren't in game. It was legitimately Tamagotchi. All in all, though, like it was insane to go through this, but it's kind of fun. Like, I mean, it's not like I could not see this as an everyday game, but it's a fun little randomized dungeon crawler with space loot. Did you actually get very far in it, Ash?
No, I didn't. I installed it, I started it up, and this week's been crazy.
I know that like I got you my code, and that was the last I'd heard from you.
I put it in, I had a mail when I created my character. I have no idea what it actually did.
Now I'm regularly getting emails from Sega inviting me to like fan fests and things like that, but I don't think that's the thing I'll ever attend because, you know, I'm not anywhere near there. The other kind of insane thing that I did this week is I ended up getting roped into playing Neverwinter, and like, I mean, loosely roped because I had already played it back in December, January-ish, and talked a little bit about it on the podcast, but Pizza Maid was rolling a character for some reason, and I ended up hanging out one night, and we had enough to build a guild, which I think took a party of 5 people. So the Owlbear Preservation Society exists over there. And one of the things that opened up was Strongholds, which are a lot like Guild Wars 2's housing system, in that it takes like everybody doing stuff to build them out, except for, like, I remember that first couple of nights after we got ours unlocked, we were able to make significant progress. Mm-hmm. That has not been the case.
But that was largely because a bunch of us had done a lot of farming leading up to that.
It's true.
Right.
We just asked for a bunch of stuff that we already had.
Yeah, the problem here is, like, it asks for stuff that you can only get once you've unlocked Strongholds, so it's not like general crafting mats. So you have to, like, run what are the equivalent of dailies to get building materials, and then once you've built a specific thing, like, so the first thing it's directing us to build is the lumber mill, and then once the lumber mill gets built, it's going to generate a certain amount of lumber a day, and then everything else takes lumber plus stone plus other resources. So it is this very intricate system that is going to be super time gated, which makes me think that we're probably not actually going to make it very far into it. But what is kind of cool, though, is you're in a home instance kind of thing when you're in your Stronghold, but it's like a big countryside map. And there are events going on out in the countryside all the time that are heroic events, and everybody in the guild, regardless of where they are, is scaled up to level 70 when they're in here. So you can just run off and do these events. So it may be to prevent somebody from opening a portal, and you have to kill a certain number of waves of mobs, or it may be asking you to go kill some bandits in a part of the zone, and you'll get rewarded some resources in doing it. So I thought it was kind of cool in that it's the same kind of thing that was happening with the Guild Wars 2 house, or the Guild Wars 2 dimension, but those enemy things never quite go away. Like, there'll always be somewhere in there. So it's as if, like, we had reclaimed the whole zone, but on the outskirts of the zone, like, we still had encounters that we could go benefit from by doing.
Yeah.
And I thought it was cool. Like, it was an interesting combination of some of the guild housing systems that I've seen before. The biggest problem is, like I said, it looks like it's going to be super slow. Like, we may never get a lumber mill made. I mean, if I was logging in every single day and doing dailies, we would probably be making progress. But it seems like it's definitely scaled for having a guild with a ton of people in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, like, if you had a whole bunch of people that were willing to do the dailies, you could rip through the requirements quickly. We have not done this thing at all. But it's still kind of cool. Like, it's better than I expected for a free-to-play game. And it's not cash shop gated, it's just time gated. I'm sure you can buy cash shop things to speed it up, but it didn't seem like there was a need to do that thing. Also, Neverwinter as a whole is a way better game than I remembered it being. Like, I am guessing it went through a lot of revisions since launch. Because I remember, like, the Guardian Fighter wasn't really a viable class when I last played it, and now it's really fun, and you can zoom around and do tanky stuff and dish out enough damage to take things down.
That game's problem was the same problem Guild Wars had at first, in that tanking was not a thing.
Yeah.
Like, there was a class for tanking, and it was not useful, because everyone allegedly had tools to avoid damage on their own, and therefore having a tank just meant you were slower.
Yeah, I think they've introduced 2 different tank classes now, so they've balanced it around the tank healer DPS dynamic, which makes it feel better significantly. I mean, also you have companions that you can pick up that can fill a role of tank, healer, DPS that are reasonable. I mean, it's significantly easier to get them out. It's significantly easier to get companions. So, I don't know, like, they did some tuning along the way, and it definitely works a lot better than it did. So, Tam, I know you streamed some Dishonored Death of the Outsider this week.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Dishonored series, as I think I've mentioned. And a couple people were telling me that I should stream me playing stealth games on really hard mode. So I figured I'd try it with Death of the Outsider. It's really interesting because you get to play as one of my favorite characters in the series. I think Billy Lurk is awesome. She's really interesting in the Dishonored 1 DLC as this sort of the Dishonored series lets you like jump through a bunch of different characters' viewpoints, and because you play as Corvo in the first one, and then you hop to in the DLC you play as Dowd in parallel with the original game, and everything that's going on with Dowd up to the point where Corvo catches up to him.
That's interesting.
And what's really interesting is what's going on with Dowd. Like Dishonored 1 makes you kind of feel like maybe the Outsider is
a total dick.
A kind of a dick. Playing as Dowd removes all doubt. Like Dowd hates that guy. But Dowd ultimately fails. And Dowd ultimately fails because Billy betrays him and literally stabs him in the back at a crucial point. And so then Dishonored 2 happens and you're playing as either Emily or Corvo and, you know, cast out of the palace and trying to make your way back. Your ally is Billy Lurk, Dowd's former right hand, which, like, okay, that's interesting. And she's pretty cagey about her reasons for helping you for obvious reasons. But so you finish the first game, or you finish Dishonored 2, and so Death of the Outsider opens up where you're Billy trying to catch up with Dowd and tie up loose ends. But Billy is fascinating because she does not have any love lost for the, you know, royal power structures that kind of keep her and everyone she knows down. But she also understands the value of order, which is why when things go really bad, she's there to help the royals fix things. And so she's kind of in this middle, and so she's really bothered. And part of why she ends up betraying Dowd is because he's going towards this insane chaos that would lead to a lot of people dying.
Right.
Like her perspective is, yeah, sure, it's great to say you're going to tear down everything, but you know who the first people to get hit when everything goes to hell are? My people. Like, yeah, you'll bring the royals down too, but they're not the ones who are going to suffer the first or the most. So she's just got this really cool perspective. And I played through. It's interesting seeing the relationship, the like clearly adversarial relationship with the Outsider, because the Outsider is like, you have that scene where the Outsider shows up and his thing is like, at the very end of the first mission, his thing is like, normally I tempt people with things that they want, but there's nothing I can offer you. You don't want anything. Well, guess I'll have to take something away. I don't really know where that's going, but it's where implications wise, but it's really neat playing Dishonored as like with the gadgets and not the magic.
Did you ever play Rejecting the Outsider?
I did, and it's real hard. I did play through Dishonored 2, completely rejecting the Outsider. That was not a clean hands playthrough.
Well, that would be so hard, though, because like a lot of how you keep from killing people is to out-magic around them.
Yeah, and you cannot do that anymore. They give you a thing in Death of the Outsider that I never had in the original, which are, I'm used to sleep darts. Sleep darts are very useful, but they don't work very well. Well, without upgrades, they don't work at all if somebody is alerted or actively going after you. and they're slow. So you kind of have to be able to plan with them. Billy dispenses with that nonsense and has taser darts that knock people out immediately. One of the interesting things for me is if I'm streaming it, the other thing that I am holding myself to is I am going to deal with whatever happens live. So if I mess something up, I'm going to have to get myself out of it.
Oh, rather than like trying to resave, just reload?
Rather than quick saving, yeah. I'm going to try to break myself of that quick save, quick load habit. Because that's a lot of how I've gotten through like clean hands playthroughs where I never get seen and don't kill anybody, because that's...
You've tried it over and over and over until you found the route.
Yeah, sometimes it takes like 2 or 3 times for me to figure out exactly how to set it all up. Whereas this is like, well, this could go very... I think I know what I want to do here, but this could go very wrong. I don't know if that makes it more or less boring to watch.
It's typically more exciting.
It is more exciting.
So probably better.
I got into a sword fight. I forgot my buttons, and so one poor guy got hella stabbed. But the thing that I want to do is still not actually kill anybody. But I may record that first level again, and so I can put the videos on YouTube and just have it as like a start to finish Let's Play, because Twitch doesn't save it for very long.
So if you use like OBS, you can record as you're streaming to a separate set of files with a separate resolution and all that.
Oh, interesting.
Which is another thing. I don't know if you can do that with I don't remember what you're using.
XSplit?
Yeah. I've never used XSplit, so I don't know what XSplit has to offer, but like Twitch or OBS is kind of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to doing things. And especially if you're using the Streamlabs version of OBS, which is a fork, it is super useful in that, like, as soon as you push stream, it flips you over to a dashboard screen, kind of like you get from Twitch. But it's all within the same client without needing to shell out to anything else. So you can see who's in chat, who's talking. You know, it does like a health check on the stream to see how many drop frames you've hit, things like that. You can see like voice meters, so you can see how your voice is translating to the audio that you're picking up as well.
Huh.
Also, at some point, you should be able to go into your settings on Twitch and have it record VODs so that anyone can go back and look at the past broadcast.
How long do those last? I was reading a thing that said they only last like 3 days.
That's what they say, but I have all 49 episodes of Elder Scrolls Online that I recorded at launch. And those are hour and a half long at times. So, like, they haven't done a purge ever, as far as I can tell.
Huh, interesting.
I think theoretically they probably put that verbiage in there to allow them to delete stuff if they needed to free up space, but like I have everything that I've ever streamed on Twitch.
Huh, so it may just be like bluster.
Could be. I mean, I think they would really like people to use VODs instead of YouTube, because they no longer allow an export to YouTube, which is something that they used to do. Also, like, they allow you to upload external videos to a VOD. So, I don't know, like, I feel like at some point they're going to make a push to YouTubeify Twitch.
I remember that the announcement that VODs would be limited in duration coincided with them encouraging you to use clips for everything. Where clips have a maximum length but stick around forever. But I'm not sure anything actually came of that.
No, I mean, clips are fine, but clips aren't what people want to watch instead of like, if you're wanting to watch a past broadcast, you want to watch a past broadcast.
Yeah.
I mean, because it does some cool stuff when you play back a past broadcast, because you actually see what was said in chat at the time. So it's recording what happened in chat and what happened in the stream. Also, the whole limiting the number of VODs thing was prior to the Amazon purchase, so maybe that stopped being a thing. But whatever the case, like, you can absolutely turn on VODs and you'll have a history of what you've streamed in the past. But you can also record it at the same time if you want to have a clean, uncompressed version of the audio or the video to edit later for YouTube.
Yeah, as evidenced on the first stream, I spent a while just mostly failboating it. Like, I'm pretty sure I wasn't audible for like the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, I ended up going away to eat for a bit, and when you came back, you had voice. But prior to that, you didn't have voice.
Yeah, Spiral helped out with that.
You shocked the hell out of Spiral, I think.
What, because I plugged my computer into the internet?
Yes. She's like, damn, streaming?
I don't have the wherewithal to get a big like green screen or something and actually be professional about it. Like, it wouldn't be hard, but it'd require some like physical construction in my home that would be kind of a pain to set up.
Well, you've gone one step further than I ever probably will, in that you have a camera hooked up.
I mean, it's really just that I've had a camera for years and it turned on automatically when I started XSplit. Like, we're not talking super elegant here. Actually, the thing that frustrates me is that I can't, I have to use a headset. I can't just use my nice mic.
Why not?
Because mic picks up speaker sounds and it echoes like crazy.
Yeah.
Which I understand why that's difficult to handle, but it also annoys me that it doesn't handle it well. I feel like audio canceling where you have 100% of both audio streams.
Yeah, certainly in that situation, audio canceling, you would think would be relatively simple.
And especially with streaming, I'm 100% willing to give it a, delay. Like, there's a delay already.
I don't use a headset, but I use headphones. So you still hear my keyboard sounds and you hear my controller sounds, as was evidenced before the show started, and I was just mashing the shit out of my keyboard, or my controller. I don't know, I guess for me, like, I never got used to listening to things out of a speaker, considering, like, most of my gaming time has been with someone else in the house that I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, I don't have a nice, like, sound system for my TV, but I do have a pretty nice speakers for my computer, and have for a while, and so I like to use them, and wearing a headset is uncomfortable. I've never found one that I particularly like.
The one I use has like these super fuzzy padded ear cups, and I absolutely forget that I've got it on. But I'm also accustomed to wearing headphones. And if you're not used to wearing headphones, I could see that being a thing. And I wear them pretty much 24/7 at work if I can help it, just to cut out some of the background noise there.
I did have a bunch of audio doubling for a while before I realized I had to mute my mic. Also, I don't know why it's like, okay, use this as my audio source. Why are you using anything else as an audio source? Please stop. I assume that someone who knows way more about recording and recording software than I do could tell me why, if I set a particular input source, it is perfectly happy to also use every other input source and give me no control over that, and why that might be something that anybody wants. But that
may be an XSplit thing.
It's not just XSplit.
Like OBS, is cognizant of all of your recording sources, but you turn them on one at a time, or you can have them all on at the same time if you want. But like by default, I think it just gives you one mic and one output. I mean, I literally know nothing about XSplit. When I first started dabbling with this stuff, it was XSplit costs money and OBS is free, so I'll try OBS now. And then I got used to it, and it seemed like it made sense to me, so I never switched. Even though I probably have a licensed XSplit somewhere through Humble Bundle.
So time limited.
They're specifically time limited, or they?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, then I don't. So I know you've also been playing a lot of L5R this week.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the Magic channel in our Slack, hasn't been about Magic at all. It's been about L5R.
It's Magic and other
and
CCGs.
Card games.
I'm really enjoying it now. I feel like I'm starting to get a feel of the flow of games.
It is a game with very different flow than most other card games of its type.
I think is go ahead.
I think is the thing I like about it.
It actually reminds me a lot of the My Little Pony flow, where you have different problems and you are sending characters to oppose your opponents, and yeah, it's more territory focused. But the fact that characters are all temporal is really interesting. It means you're trying to Well, when I'm playing, I am typically trying to get advantage in the form of like how much fate do I have, how many characters am I gonna have next turn, and always try and like plan to make sure that I am staying in a dominant position while slowly grinding out a win. But I found I really like the Dragon Clan.
Yeah, it's the mechanics are really interesting because if you summon a character, you will get that character until the end of that turn. And the only way they stick around for more than a turn is if you pay more resources to keep them around. And every character costs, no matter what character is, to keep them around, every turn they will lose one fate. Fate is your like casting resource. And if they don't have any fate on them at the end of the turn, they get discarded. So whether it's a great big 5/5 or a 0/0, it's going to cost you one fate for every turn past the first to keep them around.
I would assume in that system they don't have summoning sickness, because I don't remember, honestly, if that game did or not.
No, this is a game that does not mess around with get you into the action immediately. Like, usually, in a game like Magic, it's usually like turn 2 or 3 before stuff really starts to happen. Whereas this is like, from the word go, things are happening. Things are happening, and like, games can be decisively won, or at least a decisive lead can be gained in the first turn. But there's a lot of things that go on in each turn. Though also, the game has the most relaxed and permissive mulligan system I've ever seen.
Do you not have to lose hand advantage to mulligan?
You can mulligan...
There's a bunch of stuff you don't have to lose to mulligan.
Yeah. You basically lose... As far as I can tell, the only thing that happens if you mulligan is you remove the cards that you mulliganed from the game. But you get the same number back. You can mulligan as many or as few as you want. I don't think you can mulligan multiple times, but that's about the only thing.
You can only mulligan once, but yeah, like, if you also get to pick, so if you see one thing you want, but you want to get rid of everything else, you can do that.
Yeah. Or if you get stuff that you just can't use, because it's like, oh, this is a good start, but all of my other hand needs courtiers, and I don't have any of those. So time to discard that other hand and get the new stuff.
So one of the things that I notice as I play is in Magic, the act of like attacking an opponent is like ultimately you're just trying to whittle down this health number until it's to 0. And in L5R, the act of like doing damage to your opponent also confers a board state advantage. Like when I break a province or when I win a fight, I get something that makes my guys stronger or makes my opponents weaker. And so it's really important to try and get yourself into a position where early on you are winning fights and setting up the rest of your turn, or disrupting your opponent's plan. It's very back and forth though. Like, fights are just who has enough answers in their hand to get them through it.
And you have a lot of control about how much you have in your hand. One of my recurring issues and complaints with Magic is that if you don't get the right draw, there's not a lot you can do. And even if you have the tools to do something about the bad cards in your hand, you're giving up key resources in order to get to those cards. So you're always falling behind, even if you're just trying to correct where you are. Whereas you can, in L5R, you've got 2 decks that you're drawing from, and you always have the same number of cards every turn from one of the decks, and you have a ton of control over how many cards you have in your hand. Because you play creatures out from your provinces, and there's always 4 of them, and you play events and a bunch of other stuff out from your hand, but part of every turn is bidding on how many cards you want to draw. And you'll get however many cards you bid. So if you really need 5 cards, you will get 5 cards. You just might pay for them. But using a different resource than what it takes to cast them, which I think is great. So it's another resource you have to manage, but it's one that is separate from your... It separates your ability to have options and your ability to use those options. So if you need to, you can turn things around, because if you're flush with one resource and low on the other, you can manipulate that to your advantage, which is great. For me, it stops the feeling of, I got a bad draw, and so now I just slowly bleed out until I lose. It's like, no, I can take meaningful actions to counterbalance this, and I'm only really losing if I'm losing on multiple axes simultaneously. And sometimes I am. Sometimes it's like, well, I don't really have the honor to do this, to draw more cards, and I'm behind on provinces, and I don't have enough cards. But usually I've gotten there because I've either made a bunch of mistakes or been legitimately outplayed or whatever, but it's not because my draws have screwed me over, usually.
I definitely feel like I had a game where I just got straight a bad draw, and there wasn't much I could do about it. Which, like, I think that is sort of just the nature of CCGs, and I'm pretty, like, immune to them, but because decks are pretty, when they're evenly built, somebody getting a good draw is probably going to beat somebody getting a bad draw. And this game's turn one matters a whole lot more than most card games I've ever played.
Yeah, it just seems super aggro.
It's interesting because it sort of is and sort of isn't. It means that you know what the tempo of the game is, and you know where you stand a lot sooner than you do in, like, Magic. Because there's a lot more information, is a lot more open in general, and the overall flow of the board state is more obvious. Because with Magic, the only things you really know are what your opponent has has out on the table, how many cards they have in their hand, and what their life total is. But their life total is not exactly a meaningful number for the most part, unless it's 0, or unless you can make it 0 right now. And you don't necessarily know all of the things. There's so many complex interactions that just seeing what they have on the table is not necessarily meaningful unless you can also intuit all of the possible things they might have in their hand. Whereas I have a lot more information on what my opponent might have available and how they're doing with various resources, and based on those resources, what they might do, and also start to kind of suss out what their overall plan is for each type of conflict. And so it becomes a game about committing resources and trying to suss out exactly how much you should commit to any given exchange. It's been interesting because I've played games with Kodra and more, and from my perspective, Kodra's strategy is win early, win often. More strategy is the other thing, is lure people into traps.
Moore plays it pretty regularly in the real world, right?
Yeah.
I believe Moore has actually played tournaments.
Yeah, Moore plays tournaments and does pretty well at them, from what I can tell. But he also likes doing insane things. We played a handful of games today where he's got a unicorn deck that he's trying to make work, and unicorn is not in a good place right now. It's one of those things where if you have a game that you haven't been able to playtest enough, by which I mean in excruciating detail, you can have mechanics that are improperly weighted against one another. The classic one being like older editions of D&D where, oh hey, wizards have really powerful spells but can only cast a handful of them per day, whereas fighters are much more regular and they can attack every turn at their utmost, but that utmost has a lower cap than a wizard, and we all know how that works out.
A fighter only has to prepare sword once, and he can use it as many times as he likes.
Yep. Except, as it turns out, those are not balanced against one another.
Not in the slightest.
And so there's a little of that going with. Going on with sort of, we're very early on in the L5R cycle. And Netrunner had a similar thing, and I just see it in various places. But Unicorn, the concept behind Unicorn is they're really good at moving in and out of fights, but moving in and out of fights is not actually super useful.
It seems like it could potentially be useful to get a break somewhere where you weren't already, or abandon one if you realize you're not going to get it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of that going on.
So it is useful, but it is not useful at what they have costed it out as.
Yeah, because it has the same weight and cost as like honoring or dishonoring targets, which is a big thing in Crane and Phoenix, or putting attachments on things, which is your dragon and lion, and to some extent crab.
So the problem is being tricky and mobile is not as good as being more powerful in this game. And a lot of the other factions specialize in being more powerful.
Honoring or dishonoring people or giving people attachments are just straight power increases.
Yeah.
And similarly, stuff like being able to just bow a character is taking someone out of a fight and not letting them be in that fight anymore. And more importantly, not letting them fight another day.
Yeah, so if they get bowed, they still get the fate token removed and clear off the board.
Yep.
Basically like tapping something down in Magic. They're kind of done. They're done for this turn.
Yeah, but it also has the equivalent of Imperial Assassin.
Yeah, if they have no fate, then they're not coming back at all.
Like, one of the reasons why I really like Dragon is it has a number of ways of recurring characters. Like, it has a number of characters that ready themselves or don't bow during certain circumstances. And as you can imagine, that's really powerful.
Yeah, there are four combat phases in every turn, and your characters leave them bowed or tapped, or whatever you want to call it. And so being able to unbow them not only means that if somebody tries to disrupt you, you can undisrupt yourself. It also means that you can use your big characters sometimes 2 or 3 times in a turn.
Yeah, and if you can manage to use a big and like powerful character that you have been building on, like the character that I have found like every time I play seems to just win me a game is Nitin Master, because he's a like 3/3 for 4, so he's equally good at everything. He's kind of below the power level for what you're wanting to spend on him. But every time you attach an attachment to him, he gets to, or attach a weapon to him, he gets to ready himself. So I can play this guy and get 3 different combats out of him, which is just an incredible amount of value for a single character. Like, it's possible that he is taking care of 3 of my opponent's characters.
He definitely sounds like he is the answer to 1/1s, 1/2s, things like that.
Well, he's kind
those aren't like attack and health. Those are military and what's the other one?
Political.
Military and political. So you're either in a military fight or in a political fight. And so you only add your strength to whichever one you're dealing with. And for the most part, characters don't actually kill each other. You add up everyone's power and see who won this fight. And the winner gets the ring effect. And if they win by if their difference in strength is greater than the province's strength, they break that province.
So, do they not degrade during the course of a round?
Well, most characters ready after a single bow after a single combat.
You only lose characters that have no fate at the end of a round, which is up to 4 combats.
Right, but like in Magic terms, or
it's weird.
Yeah, like in Magic terms, like your character would be less effective after the first combat.
I mean, not really in Magic. They would have some damage marked on them, but remember, damage doesn't get marked in this type of combat.
Right, that's what I mean. Like, so successive combats with the same character by shenanigans in the same round could end up you basically killing that character because it took too much damage.
No, characters don't take damage as such.
Right, that's what I was in Magic terms, that's what I was meaning.
Sorry. Yep, doesn't happen.
Okay.
Although, unlike Magic, a character only lasts for a certain number of rounds, where in Magic, creatures stay around until they are killed by some means. So that's the big difference. And so what it actually, and the way that you spend a single fate point to get an extra turn with this creature. And this actually makes bigger creatures way, way more effective in this game, because you can be like, I'm going to spend 7 fate on this 5-cost creature, and it will be around for 3 turns, and that is worth it. Versus like, or I could get a bunch of 1-cost and 2-cost creatures out there, but it costs me a fate if I want to keep them around that much. And so it's equal amount of spending of fate on better creatures means I'm more likely to spend fate on bigger creatures. And there's a couple of other things that encourage big creatures. There's a card that everyone has access to called Charge, which just lets you play a character from one of your provinces for a single fate, and it just goes right into battle. It's amazing.
One of the things that I continue to really like about it, it's so much more complex. It is a more complex sort of on-ramp than a lot of other games. But once you're on the ramp, it's relatively straightforward. Like, you're doing a lot of interesting things, but it's not like this continual mire of rules interactions that only get more complicated the deeper you go.
I feel like it's definitely easier to build a deck in this game because your options are much more limited than like something like Magic.
Well, and the interactions are intuitive.
Ooh, I don't know that I'm going to agree with that one. We've ran into a lot of things where it's like, oh, I didn't even realize that you could do that. Because there's a lot of stuff that seems like we have intuited a whole bunch of stuff wrong.
I mean, I feel like that's true, but also, at least for all of the decks that I've made and then tuned, it has been a result of me not trusting my intuition enough and trying to build a deck more like I would build a Magic deck rather than building a deck that's doing the things that I think it's supposed to be doing. Like, my biggest problem with the Phoenix deck that I put together was that I was hedging too much. And I should have just, like, that deck got way better when I stopped hedging about what I was trying to do with it and went completely all in on, these are big creatures and I want to honor them.
Oh, yeah.
And the same was true of my Crane deck, where it started with, let's have a smattering of things, but like, no, this is a deck about couriers.
You want your decks, especially Dynasty stuff, to be very focused. I would say that unlike Magic, almost every deck probably needs to be running some sort of disruption. Like, you can't just have a straight aggro deck.
Yeah. I mean, but I also feel like that works thematically.
And that's fine. It's just one of those things that means that, like, you if you're trying to intuitively put together just a fast deck, you're going to run into some issues. That's probably not a good idea. The other thing that I'm thinking of is a lot of cards are really fiddly about when you can play them. And I find it very easy to forget when I'm allowed to play a card and not. And, like, we have routinely run into times where it's like, the UI isn't letting me play a card. Why isn't the UI letting me play a card? I don't know. And then we realize after the fact, oh, we've read this card wrong, or, oh, there was an effect that went into play, and, like, there's a lot of very fiddly things that I don't find intuitive that come up in this game. I also find myself, and this is probably something where I'm going to get faster at this as I learn more of the cards, but there is a lot of stuff to keep track of just with what is on the board. Like, what creatures can do what, and what creatures still have abilities left that they can spend.
Oh yeah, the separation between I fought with this creature and this creature can use its abilities is really interesting to me. Because there's nothing stopping there's basically no way for you to stop or very few ways that aren't expensive to stop a character from using their abilities, even if you've taken them out of a fight, even if you've tapped them. Like, they don't have to, it isn't like tap to deal 1 damage. It's once a turn, this thing can deal 1 damage. Not that damage is a thing, but you get my meaning.
Some creatures have abilities that require them to bow. I mostly don't find them that great. That's a really expensive cost.
Yeah.
Like, I know people are really into Kitsu Spirit Caller, and I kind of understand why, but that's still a really expensive cost.
I feel the same way about
Your flame dude,
the Flame Dude and
Benton's Touch.
Benton's Touch.
I mean, Benton's Touch. I felt like when you played it in the game we just had, you played it well. Where it was like, well, I lost this fight. I might as well get this guy honored out of it.
Yeah, it feels like a catch-up card to me.
This is still a game that I am learning, though, and I'm enjoying learning it. I feel like I finally have a better way of evaluating cards, which when I hadn't played any games, I was very much lacking those. I'll probably stick to the straightforward clans like Lion and Dragon for a little bit, though, until I'm ready to go into some of the more control-y gut types.
Per my usual, I have gone wide rather than deep immediately. I have like 5 different decks for 4 different clans.
So another thing that we briefly talked about before starting the show, Thalen, Grace, you two see Nergigante now.
Ugh.
What are your thoughts on Nergigante?
He's kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
I mean, that also lines up with my thoughts.
I mean, to be fair, because you guys were there to help, I did manage to murder him the first time that I tried to murder him. So I feel good about that. I am also completely positive that would not have happened if I was trying to solo it the first time.
It certainly did not happen when it was me and Belle trying to kill it.
No.
Nope, I walked in there solo the first time and it was real short.
Yeah. I feel like the fact that I was taking a lot of hate and Ash was taking a lot of hate and Grace could be arranged.
Both things? Yeah.
Yeah, like that probably helped a lot because when Thalen and I did it, it was me on longsword and Thalen, what were you using?
Charge blade.
Yeah, so we were up in his face, and that is a dangerous place to be with Nergigante.
I mean, I like spending the entire fight in his face, but I also only like doing that quest on the Lance.
I mean, I kind of now know what the pitfalls of being up in his face are, and like how to avoid those pitfalls. But that was a slow road. Like it took me a long time to figure that out.
There are spikes on his head. Spikes start flying when he does certain things.
Yeah,
spikes
but
on his
just
arms. Spikes start flying if you do certain things.
Just like when he's gonna go do horrible things like the shoulder slam.
That shoulder slide is the one thing I don't really get the tip for.
It's hard. Like I can sometimes catch it, but not most of the time. No, he kind of starts like teetering on one side, and then he boom is in it.
There's a shrugging motion right before it.
Yeah, because he pulls in his shoulders, and then he kind of leans to one side, and then next thing you see, he pushes the shoulder down onto the ground and rolls over you.
The thing that I've noticed is that other than the thing that I've noticed is Nergigante's head moves around a lot because he's looking around like frantically always, and it gives that impression of him, the head and the tail give this impression that he's like in this constant kind of like tense, but his actual body mostly isn't. And so when I was working on farming him for bits, because God, I needed so many tails. What I wound up picking up on was ignore the head, ignore the tail, watch the body, because the body is where bad stuff is going to happen.
I guess that's probably where I go wrong, because most of my life's experience is fighting Diablos, who is kind of fast and kind of big, and his head gives away what he's about to do.
Yeah. Nergigante is the opposite. His body gives away what he's going to do. And one of the things that I started doing with Glaive was I would just get away every time I saw, like, I would dodge out to get stamina back every time I saw his body move. And it wasn't necessarily important what his body was doing at that point. It was just good that I wasn't there. And when I went back with Longsword and Gun Lance and Charge Blade, getting into that habit of not watching the head but watching the body really helped. Because it's also a body motion that signals when he's going to tail swipe you.
I mean, in all honesty, like, I've learned these fights mostly by doing the most nonsense thing ever, and like doing SOS roulette with Nergigante.
That sounds like pain.
Does not sound like a thing I would enjoy doing.
But you know what? Like, I got 4 kills over the course of, I think, 7 attempts, so I'm okay with that. Like, that's better than I was doing on my own originally.
I mean, that sounds a lot more productive than I would expect that to be.
It's true.
I've also learned how to pick the group. So, like, that is absolutely a thing. Like, there are certain combinations of weapons that I won't hop in on.
Are you saying if it's 4 longsword users, you won't? I mean, if 3 longsword users, you won't be the 4th?
I will not be the 4th. No. Like there are certain things that, like, and it's hard for me to put into words what that is, but I've developed a sense of whether or not this party is going to succeed. And I have done SOS roulette for Valhazic, for Teostra, for I've gotten nothing but kills of Kushala Daor.
I can believe that.
So yeah, I mean, like, me doing that is kind of, I think, my version of when Grace would heal really bad pugs to learn how to heal a thing, like to like the worst possible case scenario.
I mean, it definitely teaches you all of your tricks.
Basically, I guess for me, it's like, I know in this group I can't really afford to faint because someone else is going to faint. Someone else is going to faint, and it's probably going to be the same person over and over. So, like, I can't really afford to faint. So I have to play without fainting. And, like, so during all 7 of those times that I did SOS roulette, like, I didn't faint at any of them. Mostly because I knew, like, there was no wiggle room. Like, somebody else was going to eat up all the possible wiggle room. I don't think I fainted when we were fighting it. Did I, Thalen?
No, it was entirely me.
I absolutely fainted when it was me, when Grace, Ash, and I, though, because, like, I got pinned in a corner.
Yeah, but feline insurance then procs, so it didn't even cost us anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fainted once, but surprisingly, I only fainted once.
Yeah, no, Nergi did horrible things to me. And we had him at Skull, but yeah, then he.
Oh man, having him at Skull is not
that is not
an indication. That's like the hard stuff is about to happen.
Yep, yeah. Shit's gonna get real.
That's
I mean, if everybody has bombs, you can kind of maybe, like, if he actually goes to sleep, which is not a guaranteed.
Which he did, but I didn't have any bombs because I didn't really know that they were a thing. I will have some next time.
But, like, in one of those situations, like, if you've got a bunch of bombs, you can kind of make that last phase go a lot shorter, but it's still going to be horrible.
My, second and third attempt, I got him all the way down there, and in my third attempt, I got him all the way to Skull without having fainted once, and then he proceeded to kill me 3 times in a row.
Ugh.
That room is the worst.
It's not only the room, he also changes his behavior to dive bomb a lot more often. Like, the non-super dive bomb that actually, it turns out, hurts even more than the super.
Yeah. My solo practice with Nergigante would probably drive a group insane, but it got me really, really used to fighting it. I basically went in there and ran down a clock just trying to survive without fighting. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, I know all of his moves. And I know them well enough that I know when I can go in and when I can't. And I'm real good at dodging his nonsense. I'm still more comfortable with that fight as the glaive than anything else.
The thing is like, you two have entered the phase where, like, every single fight you do from this point on is going to be kind of like this.
Right.
Where it's going to be a pain in the ass. And you're going to have to figure out how to not die.
It's the raid boss segment.
Why are you still playing this game?
So I'll be honest, I have found everything after Nergigante to be dramatically easier than Nergigante.
I have one disagreement with this. Teostra has given me many more problems than Nergigante.
Teostra is either really easy or really horrible, in my experience.
Yeah, same.
How much Elder Seal you are applying, I feel like, is directly equivalent to how easy that fight's going to go.
And I think that may have been my thing, is that once I beat Nergigante, I farmed Nergigante straight up until I could have the upper end Elder Seal glaive. And then once I had that is the weapon I take to fight other Elder Dragons for the most part. And it's noticeable. Like, I notice the effects of Elder Seal versus using it versus not.
I will say, like, I'm not going to go into detail about this fight because it will be a while before Grace and Thalen see it, theoretically. I struggled on the final fight of the game. Like, I just straight up struggled with that.
I played that fight as a glaive, and I genuinely thought it was like the Zora Magdaros fight where you couldn't fail it.
No, like, if you're melee, it is a different fight.
In the air the whole time.
Yeah, no, it's like... You not only are you trying not to get stepped on, but he's also constantly backing up trying to fire breathe you.
Yes.
Or burning the ground underneath you.
One of the real notable things, both Nergigante and Diablos, if they are moving forward at speed and you are crossing their path slightly above them with the glaive attack, you're going to get hit and you're going to fall down. That last fight does not happen at all. So no matter what that thing is doing, if you are above about shoulder height, you're fine. It can do absolutely nothing. And when it does some of its attacks that are very difficult to dodge on the ground, you just like, go over it. It was like, bip, up in the air, over it, done.
Well, and then it took me a while to like get used to the, well, if you're standing near me, you're fucked fight or encounter.
Yes.
Like, nope. It's just, if you're anywhere near me now, you're dead.
Wait, which fight?
The final fight.
Oh, yeah. I figured out the tell for that belly slam real quick. Still killed me twice.
I had to get that far and fail for me to see it. Like, I got that encounter on my second attempt. But I was on my final feint of the second attempt.
I was on my final feint of my first attempt. I actually haven't gone back and done it again.
I farmed that stupid thing so many times because it would not drop horns.
Oh, I got enough horns in the first go-round to get my Extermination's Edge, and I just don't give a shit anymore. Like, now that I have that, I don't actually care about that fight. I will do it for other people, but...
I have made a full set of gear for that fight. I've made the Nergigante upgraded fight, and I've made 4 of its weapons. I may have opinions about the aesthetic.
You like glowy things?
I might like glowy things.
I mean, you kind of look like a Christmas tree topper.
It's amazing.
In that set. No, it's like that is nothing that I want to wear. I am wearing Death Stench.
You're like the opposite of me.
It's an awesome set.
You pop up on the opposite shoulder as I do.
Yes. Death Stench is a great set. Horrible name, but a great set.
It makes you look like the Grim Reaper.
Yeah, and
also gives you loads and loads of dragon attack.
Do some dragon attack. Gives you some handicraft. Gives you some focus.
Which unfortunately I don't need the handicraft because I've got a weapon now that's capped from the start.
You should use the Belghast weapon instead.
I get flinch free and a ridiculous sharpness buff.
Razor Sharp is good.
Razor Sharp is really good.
Technically, I'm not wearing a full set of Death Stench. I've got the Dober chest for the attack power, and the eye patch for the weakness, whatever.
I hate the Dober chest piece so much.
The tribal bra?
Yes, that one.
What's wrong with the tribal bra?
Pretty sure you just said it.
It doesn't bother me for whatever reason. I don't know.
I've
been wearing that set for a long time, so
the set that I'm wearing, I'm actually using the Kirin chest piece, which shockingly works with the whole look.
I mean, I'm still wearing my Aloy set, and I'm gonna be super sad when I have to stop. I really like being Aloy.
I don't know what the fully upgraded version of that is equivalent to.
Antonath gear, I think. Which sort of makes sense. I think it's just the Antonath Alpha set.
Okay. Which, yeah, no, there's several sets better than that.
Yeah, I mean, I already... I can't craft them because I don't have enough bits, but, I can see them in my list that there are, multiple things already that are better than it, but,
I've noticed
I don't want to not be Aloy.
I've noticed that because you're talking about, a tier 5 set versus a tier 8 set.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really matter a whole lot.
It really doesn't, because the tier 5 set, I have a tier 5 set that I use a few pieces from, that has like 22 available upgrades, whereas my tier 8 set has 5. So like you do end up, you can, at least as far as I've seen, and the pieces that I've upgraded, like my Lumu chess piece that I've upgraded a lot, is like 2 points of defense behind my like tier 8 top end Kieran's piece. So it's,
the thing that I've noticed is like the tier 8 stuff seems to be way more generous with decoration slots than the tier 5 stuff.
So what's happening is there is a lot more item value on the tier 8. Like the chest I'm working on building is a tier 8, and it's got 8 item value worth of upgrades, whereas the tier 5 has like 5, I want to say.
You're referring to something that may have handicraft on it?
Yes. And that's sort of the thing, is like some upgrades are not created equal according to them, and you can agree and disagree with them as you want. But stuff like handicraft costs 3 points, where stuff like attack power, I think, costs 1 point.
Attack boost is 1.
Attack boost is 1.
These are also reflected in the rarity of gems, so it's not quite that straightforward.
They're all reflected in the rarity of the gems, yeah.
Like attack boost is only a one slot gem, but it's also rarity 7, so it's hard to get. Whereas earbuds is 3 slots, but it's rarity 6.
Yeah, but you can theoretically figure out, like you can sort of math out and see, hey,
I don't think it's quite that straightforward.
Well, it has consistently been straightforward for me. Is the number of the cost of a gem slot wise is reflected in the difference between the alpha and the beta version. Like each stat you lose gives you that many gem slots worth of decoration.
That part is absolutely true.
I'm still mostly leaning towards alpha because I find it sufficiently
decorations.
Well, I don't have that many good decorations. I have lots of garbage decorations.
I have a lot of garbage decorations.
I have a decent number. I have an attack power gem, which I think they give you for free.
You have your free attack power gem?
I have an attack power. I have 2 defense. I have a non-elemental weapon. And I'm trying to think what the other one that I consider valuable is. But like I have maybe 4 or 5 valuable gems.
I have critical eye. And the thing is you can take all of those terrible gems and you can turn them into elemental attack gems.
Sure.
Which is something worth probably doing if you're using elemental.
At a certain point, most weapons cap at 3 points of elemental attack.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I'm already there on my Death Stench set, so
what I am working on right now is a armor set. I'm trying to build an armor set that is fully optimizing fire and ice. And so I'm definitely looking at getting my 3 points of ice attack and trying to see if I can get 3 points of blast attack somehow. But yeah, somebody got affinity sliding and I'm real jealous of them.
I may have affinity sliding on Jam.
Oh, really? I also have affinity sliding.
I'm real jealous of both of you. I want that for a hammer set.
I mean, the real answer is to farm Elder Dragons.
I thought it was to farm Tempered.
I've got news for you. Having farmed about a whole lot of both of those things, it's not.
Your best chance at getting gems that are good is farming tier 2 tempered monsters.
Yeah.
HR 30 plus.
Best chance is a real
yes, this is
it's important.
Yeah,
it's an important concept there.
I was just going on based on the fact, like, every time I've taken down an Elder Dragon, I've gotten 2 gems or more.
Yes, that gets you the lower tier gems for killing normal Elder Dragons, usually. Some stuff starts to happen once you get to the point you're currently at.
Yes, I have not done the thing that's going to uncap me further yet, because I was, I don't know, doing nonsense.
It's the most fun ever. It's
so
fun.
There's
so
nothing fun about that concept to me.
Oh no,
it doesn't sound that bad.
It sounds hilarious to me.
It's the most hilarious.
Double basil?
I wish I could do it again. double tempered basil. I wish I could do that fight over and over again because it is legitimately the funniest fight I have been involved in that game.
It's two tempered basil juices, so they do increase damage but don't have dramatically increased health, and they can hit each other because monsters can hit each other in this game.
And basils are
two big, giant, explosive attack radius monsters in the same area, beating up on each other mostly. So just stand clear and watch it and enjoy the fun.
Big bowl of popcorn. They're fiercely territorial, and they go to the same territories because they're on the same scripts. So every time one flees, the other one's following it real soon.
I figured this wasn't worth doing this nonsense before the podcast, so
it is real funny. I think the easiest way to lose that fight is to actually try to participate.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Oh no, it's a terrible plan. You'll get exploded so fast. Just take your slinger out and throw rocks at one until it's mad and bring it to the other one. And let the problems solve themselves.
I hate basil so much.
I hate doing it with longsword. But
since
basil with greatsword, greatsword is perfectly fine and actually really funny.
Glaive and Gunlance both wreck basil pretty good.
I need to farm him a lot because 1, I want to make several pieces of his armor, and 2, I actually want to make his hunting horn because I want to get into hunting horn, and that seems like a pretty reasonable one.
I need my gems.
I got into
or the bag item things.
I got into his light bowgun because it looks amazing, and I need to farm a whole bunch of Odog, even though it's one of my least favorite fights for more gun parts.
I discovered I love fighting Odog when there's somebody else with me.
You can just sit back and start attacking?
Yeah, I mean, fighting it with a bow by yourself is kind of misery.
That does sound awful.
But fighting it with a bow when there's somebody else there is a piece of cake.
Odog was a learning experience for me because I most recently did it in the Talons of Iron and Ice quest, which is Lydiana and Odog. And I went to that quest with a greatsword because Lydiana with a greatsword is the way I like to do that fight now. And didn't actually manage to stop at the camp before I ran into Odog. So I ended up fighting Odog with a greatsword. This took some learning. You basically have to attack where he's going to be because you are not fast enough to swing where he is.
He doesn't like to stand still. I had similar difficulty fighting him with Charge Blade.
That was also, I guess that fight made me get better at tackling through things. Because if you face him head on and tackle through his attacks, then he's right there for when you get done with that tackle.
I guess for me, this is like the game that keeps on giving. Because there's like plenty of nonsense for me to do when I'm not trying to progress. But the progression feels meaningful enough that like it takes me a little bit to do it.
I need a stupid thing.
What stupid thing do you need?
It's a green bit of paper.
I hear there's 2 ways to get that.
Yep. And they're both dumb.
The simpler way is completing all the quests.
Yeah.
This is a decent week to do that.
No. All of the optional quests.
There's a lot of those.
Oh, okay.
There are a whole lot of those.
Yes. I'm slowly working my way through it. I'm through the first 3. I completed the first 3 or 4 stars.
6 capturing, and therefore being able to win the special arena was the quest I was missing.
I have a lot of that done just from like my adventures in SOS Roulette. The things that I'm missing are like the drag the egg from one place to another quests.
Those are miserable.
I know we did the hardest one of those, though.
Yeah, I just need to do the other one.
They're actually really easy with a buddy.
I bet they'd be really easy with a buddy, but...
I kind of want to get...
If you haven't done them yet, then grabbing the Kulu arms for Pro Transporter makes them much easier as well.
Yeah, because I did those. And yeah, with the Kulu arms, it really wasn't that bad.
I'm sure I have plenty of Kulu bits from all the times I've killed a chicken bird.
I've killed surprisingly few Kulu high ranks.
I mean, I just made some regular ones. Like it's a 1 dot skill. So, and if you're running eggs, then you don't intend to get hit, so defense doesn't matter.
Still a really great game.
I haven't had the time to play much of it because this week has been insane on my end, and I'm going to be out of town for most of next week, but I really do enjoy I like hopping back in and playing more of it.
It's also going to be an update next Thursday.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Adding a different invader, so maybe it'll stop showing up in every single quest. And also some balance changes.
Mostly
which
buffs.
are almost universally buffs.
Gunbows don't get any changes.
Bows also all nerfs. But the nerf is a bug fix for no, you can't fire Dragon Piercer behind you, and no, spread shots should not apply twice to this attack. And Charge Blade also got a small nerf to the stun value of the Ultra on impact files. And a buff to literally everything else.
Yeah, every other attack's stun went up, and that one went down. So
Glaive got a buff to everything I could possibly have hoped for.
That's basically what I have to say about Lance as well.
Like,
it's one change, and it's everything I could have asked for.
Glaive is three changes, I think.
It's extracts last longer. Extracts don't drain while mounting, and I think something else, but I don't remember what it is.
I think it was a slight potency bump on the attack power one.
Right, yeah. Red and white and triple buff got attack power up.
Yeah. Oh, white got attack power up?
The combo of red and white and triple buff. So just red is the same. Red and white will be up a little bit, and triple buff will be up a little bit.
Well, that's even better. It also, the bit where a timer stops when you're mounted is kind of important for Glaive. Although I have to relearn a whole bunch of habits that I picked up.
Like reacquire buffs during the down.
Yeah.
But you just don't have to do anymore. You can just beat the monster up.
I'll just keep on doing that. I can do the thing that you're supposed to do when the monster falls down.
Basically, for me, like, Foresight Slash becomes way easier to use. And Spirit Helmbreaker, I can't get knocked back while I'm in the air.
Lance just gets super armor during counterattacks, which is great because multi-hit attacks that would knock you out of your counter were like the worst thing on Lance before.
Look, really the most important thing that's changing is that, like, Bezel can't come and smack me around while I'm trying to carve once I've completed a quest.
That is the single most important change in the entire patch. No getting knocked back after the quest is done.
Nonsense. I have encountered players that really like to knock people back while they're carving. It is a thing.
It happened to me, but I'm glad it's going away too.
Yeah, I have never had that happen. I didn't realize it was a thing that could happen until I read that patch note. It was like, oh, I know why that's there.
If you build it, they will grief you.
I mean, it's probably way too premature to say this, but like something is going to have to be really magical to knock this out of contention for Game of the Year for me.
It's still early.
Yeah.
I mean, my game of last year was already released, and we played through most of it by now.
Sure.
But you don't think that Battle for Azeroth is going to be your Game of the Year? Sorry, I can't even get through that without laughing.
Oh wow! How the tide has turned! Holy crap!
I'm just really hoping it's playable.
Whoa!
I'm not expecting greatness. I'm just hoping that it doesn't piss me the hell off and make me not even get to the level cap.
Wow! I didn't realize that we'd come to this place.
Look, I mean, when you have a return to the core of the franchise, it's, faction versus faction, and
that
backpedal all of the progress that you made in Legion. You do not enter an expansion on a good note for me. I mean, I would be a liar if I said anything other than I will play it, but I'm giving it some serious side eye. Anyway, we have anything else we want to discuss before we wrap things up?
I'm actually sort of curious. Has anybody played or heard much about Sea of Thieves?
I mean, I've watched some streams of it.
I saw that one Penny Arcade comic. That's it.
It seems to be very alpha.
I'm aware of it, but it seems like a not me game, so I haven't paid a lot of attention.
Yeah, same.
I've seen people talking about it, and if it was a completely different game, I would probably be interested in it. Like, conceptually, I like the universe and the the aesthetic of it, but the actual gameplay sounds like my worst nightmare.
I mean,
the game itself sounds like a Griefer's Paradise. What I've seen, so yeah.
If we could be like a ship full of Maelstrom officers roaming around exploring new islands,
oh yeah,
that would be amazing.
I would be all over that.
I'm not sure this is going to be amazing.
Is this a game of us roaming around, finding an island, and then getting sunk by other pirates who are grifting off of our work?
I'm pretty sure it's a game of like sailing around, finding an island, fighting your way to some treasure, getting it back on your ship, taking it all the way back to port, and then getting attacked by griefers and having all of your stuff stolen.
Yeah.
Yes, that's precisely the sort of game it seems like. I mean, there are interesting things going on, but I think the interesting things will lose their novelty quick, like the fact that you actually have to do all the things that you would have to do if you were actually, trying to pilot a ship. So you have to send somebody up to move the sails and...
See, that for me is the most compelling thing.
And that's going to be interesting
cool
for
the
first hour or so until you get tired of being the person that shimmies up the pole to do the thing.
Well, then you switch with your friends. Like, hey, let me drive this. Let me steer for a bit, and and you control the radio.
I think Star Trek Bridge Simulator sounds really interesting for about an hour.
I am so sad that I have not had a chance to play Star Trek Bridge Simulator. I want to play that game so bad.
Yeah, that's one of those that I would really love to play, but you have to get sufficient people all together to play it.
Yeah.
If only such a thing had come out back when I was in college.
Yeah, I feel like I probably would have played the hell out of it in college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, like my core problem with Sea of Thieves is the same problem I have every time someone introduces a new sandbox game, is they have PvP focus.
Yep.
And that checks me out immediately. Like, I mean, Camelot Unchained could have some of the coolest features ever, but the fact that those features exist in a PvP-centric game means I'm not likely going to play it.
I wonder if they'll have the just explore mode where you don't have other people around.
I mean, that's like the saving grace of Ark, for example. Is it's a very PvP-centric game if you're playing against other people, but you can set up a server on your own box that has whatever rules you want and just roam around and explore the island. I don't think, this feels like a server-based type game, and I'm not sure if you can tweak the gameplay settings at all. But consistently, I am interested up until the point where they start talking about how player versus player focused something is, and then I'm just gone.
If I saw one of those starry-eyed up-and-coming MMO things, announcements where they were talking about how their big open-world sandbox was going to be fully collaborative and that the challenge would be the world, not other players, and that you'd have to work together.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. I would be on board that, probably against my better judgment.
I mean, if you have something like that, and it's going to be really hard to, build a town, or build a bridge, or, open up new areas of the world for exploration. And it's going to take, lots of people working together and crafting things. And, to some extent, that's the way Horizons was. And that game had massive faults, like the fact that most of the world wasn't even populated. But it had some cool stuff going on. I can remember when we were building one of these giant public works projects, you would have crafters that were running loads of material between the nearest quarry and the bridge. And then I would sit there as a adventurer, and I would make sure that the road was clear and kill whatever baddies that would spawn that would stop the crafters from moving. Because in that game, if you were a crafter, you had a different set of gear that you wore that allowed you to carry lots of stuff or craft faster, or and in doing so, you were weak. If you got engaged in combat while you were wearing your crafting gear, it was tissue paper and you would fall over. So you needed the adventurer types to be out there making sure that people were able to move between point A and point B. And it was great. It was so cool. And that's where I met Shiana, was through that game and organizing these giant public works projects.
Yeah, the concept also makes me really miss Glitch.
Yeah.
Because that was another, you don't even really deal with combat. It's just like the super collaborative, everyone out in the world and like exploring new places and building silly things. Like I want a sandbox that lets me do that and not have to worry about all the people around me being out to get me.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would back that like some people backed Star Citizen.
Didn't you back Star Citizen?
Yes, but minimally. I backed Star Citizen precisely enough to have a kind of okay ship if it actually becomes a thing. Which, to its credit, it's continuing to do, slowly.
That game has massive scope creep problems.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's entirely comprised of scope creep at this point.
There is... I jumped into their alpha.
It's a game you can actually play now.
I jumped into their alpha and experienced a playable adventure like a year ago.
It will be a grand game if it ever comes to full fruition. And in the meantime, Elite seems to be doing a really good job at filling that space.
I like Elite Dangerous, but I got a little tired of it because it wasn't varied enough. Like the experience was not varied enough after a relatively short period of time.
They've come out with several expansions since then, I think.
Yeah, I should hop in there and check it out again.
Man, that was some meandering.
It happens.
We slid all over the place. Any other topics? And the silence says no. So I guess we'll wrap things up. Hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good one.